So this month I'm talking all things money and pricing, and I wanted to just do a bit of a fun video where I discuss all of the ways that I have made money online in my career of having an online business. Well, to be fair, I've had a couple of online businesses and I've tried a lot of things over the years. So I want to talk a little bit about that because I think it's valuable for you to know all of the ways that are potentially out there for you to have a side hustle, to start something. I know I talk about handmade business mostly on this channel, but there are lots of other ways to make money online. And there's no reason why you can't potentially have a side hustle on your side hustle, or even when it comes to the handmade industry, maybe do something like selling patterns or teaching workshops and so on. So let's dive into my history and I'll tell you a little bit about how it all started for me and what I've tried over the years in order to try to make a living online. So I fell in love with the internet in about 1996, which is when we first got it at home. I was in grade 10 at the time, so about halfway through high school, and I just loved it. I taught myself HTML so that I could build websites, and I'll let you in on a little secret. My very first website was an X-Files fan site. Yes, I was a huge fan of the X-Files, and so I learnt how to do HTML so I could make myself an X-Files fan site. Such a teenage thing to do, I know, but it's hilarious, and I'm so glad that I did because that skill has really paid off over the years for me. So I fell in love with the internet, and this was, before the sort of bubble of 2000, the dot-com bust that happened, and there was endless possibility, but also we had no idea what was to come when it came to the internet. We had no real conception of the possibilities. Like PayPal didn't exist. There wasn't really a way to take money except via a credit card on the internet. And, there was no way to do that unless you were like a proper business or a bank. So it was a very different world. But in my head, I always, right in the back of my head, had this dream that maybe, just maybe one day I could work out how to make a living on the internet. Of course, I didn't really take it seriously. I still went down the traditional career path. I went to university, I got a job, etc., etc. But alongside that, over the years, I also was keeping my finger in the pie of the internet and trying lots of different things. So one of the first things I did back in the day was make a website and then sell to Cafe Press. So I think they're still around now. They're one of those print on demand type companies. So I made some graphics and uploaded them. Now I am not an artist or a graphic designer. So it's hilarious to me to this day that some people actually bought my stuff, and I did no marketing, like absolutely nothing. I literally just uploaded them to the platform and sort of let it happen. And over I think my stuff was up there for a couple of years, and over that time, a few people did buy stuff with my designs on them, and I made a teeny tiny amount of money, like probably less than $100. The first big way that I made money on the internet was I actually got an online job. And I think this was in about 2001. I actually got a job working for an editing company that helped international students with their dissertations. So basically people doing PhDs and things like that would need their work looked at and edited so that it was ready for publication. And I managed to land that job because in my university course, one of the things I did was some courses on editing because I majored in English. That was one of my majors. And so I landed that job, and it was fantastic for me because I was actually studying my education degree at the time, living in a remote community. I was basically overqualified for any job that I tried to go for because I already had some degrees, and it was perfect. So that's the first way I actually made a decent amount of money online, was working for somebody else for their online business. So when I left that town and moved on and got my first full-time job, I finished up with that online job. And then I was kind of working for a few years and I was too busy to really think about running an online business. I was in my first year of teaching, and anyone who's been a teacher knows how stressful that is. I had no brain power or mental space to start anything else. So it was a few years later that I kind of got back to it, and I started a blog that had nothing to do with anything that that I do now. It was called Sustainable Suburbia. So it was all about how to have like an eco-friendly, sustainable lifestyle while living in the suburbs. And that was just something I was really interested in at the time. And so as I built that blog up, I started, putting Google AdSense on there and making a little bit of money from the ads on my blog. So ads on my stuff is something I've made some money from over the years. So I've run a couple of blogs, and now here on YouTube, obviously, I am monetized here on YouTube, and I earn a little bit of money from the ads that run in my videos. So I have made little bits of money over the years from advertising, basically from Google. Thanks, Google, for allowing them to put ads on my stuff. And so that is something that I'm still doing to this day. And with YouTube, I'm definitely making more money from that than I ever have before, even though it's still not very much. So now we're coming up to the late noughts. So 2008 is when I started my jewelry business, Ethereal. And as I was starting that, or perhaps I think just a little bit before I started that business, I actually started a blog alongside it called Ethereal Designs. And that blog made all the difference. So I was doing pretty much daily blog posts on there. You have to remember, this was the heyday of blogging. This was before Instagram existed, before any of those, like before Pinterest existed. So we basically had blogs and we had Facebook and Twitter, and that's pretty much all there was when it came to networking and social media. So blogs were a huge deal back then, and people really hung out on them. They chatted in the comments, built relationships, and I built a lot of really important relationships over that time, which saw me have lots of experiences, such as being invited to speak at an Etsy conference in Sydney. I got invited to go on a North Queensland trip. So those were like some of the big things that happened. But the most important thing was that blog built a community of people who wanted to know what I was doing. And so that was how I managed to start Ethereal and start getting some sales and started to build the jewelry business. Now, this is not what I was expecting. I was never expecting to make jewelry and sell it online. That was just, it came out of nowhere kind of for me. And but I ran with it because I saw, I guess, the potential. And really, I was just having fun with it at the time. So I started selling my jewelry, my Ethereal jewelry. It started doing well. I won't go into the whole story of how I ended up going full time, but if you'd like to hear that story, you'd like me to do a video on how I actually started this and why I started it and how I went full time. It was actually an accident. Let me know in the comments below, and I'll be happy to do a video on that, telling you more about it. If you are curious, you can go listen to episode 0 of the Create and Thrive podcast, where I actually outline that story, but that was a few years ago, so there's a bit more to it now. Anyway, so I started selling my jewelry on Etsy. I started doing markets. So that was the offline component, but the online component was very much selling directly on Etsy, and that's how that began. And then as I started doing that over the years, people kept asking me questions about how I did stuff. And so one night I had this idea for an ebook, and I literally stayed up all night writing it, and then I sold that. And that was my very first ebook. And it went really, really well, and it made a decent amount of money. So that was my first experience of making money from a proper digital product. And I could see the potential there. Like, the beautiful thing about selling digital products is the scalability of them. You make it once, it sells over and over again. So that definitely got me thinking, well, how can I do more of this to supplement and add to my jewelry business income? Because there is a limit on that unless I want to start employing people. And at this stage, I was still doing it all myself. Nick was there, but he was very much doing the house spouse thing and hadn't really started doing too much in the business at that stage. Alongside that, some of you might remember, if you've been around for a very long time, that I actually started a little magazine called Bespoke. And it was a print magazine. So I had no background in this. It was literally a passion project because there wasn't really much for the Australian handmade community back then, and I wanted to create something to bring us together and tell our stories. So I started this magazine, and it was based in Australia. I interviewed Australian people and I sold it here. And I had to learn how to publish a magazine. I had no idea. My friend Michaela volunteered to design the first edition for me. Yes, that is the same Michaela who I am now a co-host with on the Business of Making podcast. That is how we met. She saw that I was doing this project and just put her hand up, and she did the first one for free, but then I paid her for the subsequent ones once we were getting a bit of money in the door. So for that, I sold that via subscription, via individual issues, and I also sold advertising space in the magazine. So that was a whole new world that I had no idea about, but I learned very quickly with a crash course because I had to, because it was expensive to get magazines printed. So that was another way that I made money, was through the whole bespoke thing. It wasn't particularly profitable. It was definitely more of a passion project. I did not cover my time. Let's put it that way. I definitely covered costs, but maybe that and a little bit more. So it wasn't a particularly profitable enterprise, but I had fun while I was doing it. And then eventually I ended up selling it on to someone else because I wanted to start Create and Thrive, and that all happened around that time. Another way I made money through Bespoke was on the covers of every issue, I actually featured an Australian artist, and I wanted to do something when I was leaving Bespoke to celebrate that. And so what I did is I created a calendar with all of the artwork from the previous cover issues, and I did a crowdfunder. So that was another thing that I'd never done before, but I crowdfunded the calendar, and that went really, really well. And again, we got them printed and shipped them out and made a little bit of money off that project. Okay, so at this point in time, I'd become relatively well known in the handmade community, especially at least here in Australia. And that meant that I got some other opportunities like paid speaking engagements where someone would pay me to come and do some teaching around handmade business. So that was another way that, not specifically making money online, but it was due to my online presence and the work I'd done online that allowed me to make that money through those sort of paid speaking engagements. Around the same time, I tried a few other little things, such as helping people build their websites, getting paid writing gigs online to do with the handmade community and industry. So these were like little things that sort of popped up, little opportunities, doing sponsored posts on my blog, which was still very popular at the time. So those are all ways that I made little dribs and drabs of money. And another way was affiliate marketing. So affiliate marketing is where you recommend somebody else's product, and if somebody buys that product through the link that you provide, you get a cut of the proceeds. And I've done that off and on over the years. It's not something I focus on a lot because I'm very selective about what I promote and the products that I recommend. And often I'll recommend something even if it doesn't have an affiliate program. So some of you might have heard of or be familiar with like the Amazon affiliate program. You'll probably see that if you watch a lot of YouTube videos. You'll probably see people with like Amazon links in their descriptions and stuff. So that's a form of affiliate marketing. And one sort of adjacent way that I do that now is if you look in my description below, you'll see where it says, open your Etsy shop and get 20, is it 20 or 40? I can't remember, free listings to get started with. And the benefit of that is that if you click on that link and start your Etsy shop, I get the same number of free listings that you do. So it's not a big deal, but it means that I haven't had to pay to relist or list a product in my shop for quite a long time now because enough people use that link to sign up to Etsy. So that saves me a little bit of money. I'm not making money per se, but I'm saving money. For those of you who are interested or have like a big social media presence or a blogging presence, Etsy does actually have a proper affiliate program where you can recommend products and then get a cut of the proceeds. So check that out if that's something you're interested in. So that is, as you can see at this point, I've tried a lot of different things and we're not even finished. So now we're getting to the point where I started Create and Thrive. And alongside that, of course, I started Set Up Shop, my flagship e-course. Now, I'd actually experimented with an e-course previous to this called Crafty and Connected, where I was teaching makers how to leverage social media to market their businesses. This was I think in 2011 or 2012. So it was a long time ago. And I saw the potential again for courses because it's got that scalability. You make it once, you sell it lots of times, and it's a very profitable way of making money online. So I started Create and Thrive. I started Set Up Shop. Now, for me, it was really important that I understood my community. And I do because I'm in the community. And that's why you'll never see me charging lots of money for my courses and my membership. If you look around out there at some of the prices that people charge for e-courses, there was a period of time there where the standard was like $2,000 for a 6-week e-course. And there was a lot of those floating around. That's something I'm never going to do, and I don't plan on doing it because I don't think the handmade community can afford that sort of money, most of you. And I know I've never invested in that expensive of a course. And I want to make sure that my work is accessible to people while also being enough to make a living for myself. So that's why my courses are all very affordable prices. Because and this comes back to pricing. And if you haven't seen my last video where I talked about how to price your handmade goods, I kind of touch on this idea of understanding your market. I don't cover it in depth because I'm actually doing a live online workshop about this very topic in my membership community, the Thriver Circle, on pricing with the head and heart, or the art and science of pricing your handmade goods, where I talk about that other element, which is the art of pricing, where you have to understand your community, you have to understand your ideal customer, you have to understand the market that you exist in. If you're interested in that and you want to check it out, there's a link in the description that'll take you to more info about that workshop, and you can just see if you want to join me for that or not. So to get back to the story, I was selling Setup Shop. I still had I think at that point I had 1 or 2 ebooks that I'd done over the past few years. And I think most of those ebooks are gone now. I had one where I interviewed successful Etsy sellers and they shared how they'd been successful. That went really, really well as well. So since then, I've done a few different things with Create and Thrive. I've obviously, started my podcast. I have started the membership community, the Thriver Circle. I've sold e-courses. I've done live e-courses as well as DIY sort of ones where you sign up and you take it in your own time. And I've worked with other people to actually write those. So they're not all written by me. I've actually sometimes brought somebody in who's an expert to do the content of those. And then we have a profit sharing situation where they get a percentage of the sales and I get a percentage of the sales. So that's another way to work with other people. Alongside that, I've also done shop critiques, and I still do that to this day. If you go to Create and Thrive, you can actually buy a shop critique from me and I will go in and critique your shop. There's a simple one and a more in-depth one. I have done one-on-one business coaching and teaching. That's not something I do much of anymore. I basically only do coaching and teaching inside my membership community, but there is a way in there to get one-on-one coaching and shop critiques from me as a member. So again, you can check that out over at thrivercircle.com and see how you can be eligible for that as a member. So I think the last way that I've made money online at this point is through Patreon. So for my other podcast, the Business of Making podcast, we have a Patreon account set up, and that is the only way that we get income for that podcast because we don't sell ads on there. So we have to rely on you, our listeners, to actually give us some income from that. And I'm actually considering starting a Patreon for my podcast and for this channel, basically all of the free content that I put out there. Really, at this point, I still rely on people becoming my students, so joining the Thriver Circle and taking my courses. But I know there are some people out there who are I've actually had them contact me and say, hey, Jess, I don't need this from you, but I'd love to support you. So I've been thinking about starting a Patreon for my own creative work as well. I haven't completely been sold on the idea yet, but it's something I'm considering. And this is the thing, you're always thinking about new things and new ways that you can potentially be making money. And that's part of being an entrepreneur, being self-employed, is you have to be agile and you have to look at what's possible. As you can see here, I have tried and succeeded and failed with lots and lots of different ways of making money online, and it's been quite the adventure. And of course, some of those ways have paid off so well that I have managed to be self-employed for the last 11 years, which has been absolutely fantastic. And I'm so very thankful that I've managed to make that happen, and that, all of the people out there who have bought my work, the thousands of people who've bought my jewelry, who've bought my courses, who've been in my membership, who've worked with me over the years, without their support, without your support, this wouldn't be possible. And that's another one of the really special things about running a business, is that personal connection to all of those people who make it possible for you to live and survive and thrive. So thank you so much to all of you who have bought something from me in one of these ways over the last almost 2 decades that I've been doing this crazy journey of trying to work out how to make a living online. There are so many other ways that you can make money online these days as well. And I hope this has given you some inspiration to see what's out there, experiment with different ideas, and hopefully grow your own business as well. Thank you so much for watching. If you enjoyed this, please give me a thumbs up. Let me know that you did, and make sure to subscribe if you want to see more videos from me in the future. I'd love to hear from you in the comments below. What are some of the ways you have made money online or tried to make money online over the years or even the days or the months? I don't know how long you've been doing it, but I'd love to hear from you about that. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next video. Bye for now.